Hello and welcome to episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. Today is Thursday, August 17th. Hope everyone's having a good day so far and had a good rest of their day yesterday. It is in fact Thursday, August 17th here today. It is a Thursday program here on the Bubbs on Sports podcast, fresh off of being at Jets and Buccaneers training camp practice or joint practice yesterday. Had a lot of fun. Always enjoy going out to Jets practices. That was my first time being at a joint practice ever. I try to go to about at least one training camp practice every year for the Jets, but my first time ever being at a joint practice. Had a lot of fun. Was definitely a change. Was definitely a different energy level. Obviously, having another team in there, it gets old after a while watching, or for the players at least, going up against the same guys, going up against your teammates. So it was cool to see another team. Todd Bowles returned to his old stomping grounds, Florham Park, New Jersey. So you got to see him. Got to see, obviously, the man now in charge, and that is Robert Saleh. So a lot of takeaways there. I had all my takeaways, had my Jets and Buccaneers joint practice up yesterday. So if you want to check that out, it's up on In the Trench with Gangrene on Apple Podcasts. But we got a lot to get into today after a day off yesterday, talking all things sports here on the show. So we'll open up today with some New York Yankees. And they obviously are coming off a sweep in Atlanta where they fell to under 500 on the season. They fall deeper in the playoff race. That's not exactly, though, what I want to get into. I want to get into today some comments made by a former Yankee prospect about the dysfunction within the organization, specifically with player development, something we've talked about a lot. And if you haven't heard about these comments yet, well, I'm going to discuss them today, and I highly recommend you reading and listening to these comments because they are very alarming if you're a New York Yankees fan from somebody within the organization that experienced the player development dysfunction that is within this Yankee organization. So we'll get into that today to open up the show. I also want to get into the false media narrative surrounding Robert Saleh and the New York Jets. And look, I expected this to happen because of Hard Knocks. I've loved episodes 1 and 2 of Hard Knocks. It's been awesome. But I've expected these false media narratives to be brought up through the first 2 episodes of Hard Knocks because people are taking Robert Saleh or taking this Jets team and completely flipping it upside down and acting like things aren't going well, acting like this team's got many issues. You saw it on the back page of the New York Post today, the Jets' offensive line concerns, and you see, Matthew Judon was on there. I think you saw Von Miller was on the back page, and it was a Jets O-line concerns, and it was a turnstile, and all those issues. And the media, again, is acting as if the New York Jets have all these problems and are taking unnecessary shots at Robert Saleh, and it's all completely false. So we'll get into that in the second topic on today's show. We'll also get you ready for Mets-Cardinals tonight as the Mets open up a 4-game set in St. Louis. As for the Yankees, they get a much-needed day off. Again, as a Yankee fan now, you look forward to the days off because watching them play is so painful. You like the days off if you're a New York Yankees fan at this point. That's how bad it's gotten. They'll open up a 6-game homestand tomorrow with 3 against Boston, and then they'll welcome the Nationals to town after that. But we'll start today with the New York Yankees. Then we'll get to some football later on. Look, I'll start here quickly. Obviously, the Yankees lost to the Braves, got swept. No surprise there. You lose game 1, you get crushed 11-3. You get crushed in game 2, 5-0, where you only have 1 hit. And then you lose that last night again, 2-0. So overall, the Yankees got shut out for the last 2 games. They haven't scored a run in 18-plus innings of baseball. Overall in the series, they got shut out 18-3 or lost combined, outscored 18-3 in the 2 games, 11-3, 5-0, 2-0. We knew that was going to happen. I said the New York Circus, I said the Bronx Circus was going to roll into Atlanta and come out of there under 500, and they did just that. They're 60-61 now in the year. They are officially under 500, a winning percentage of .496. They are 14 games out of the AL East, dead last in the AL East. They have now lost 5 straight, 2-8 in their last 10, and their playoff percentage is 2.4% here, according to ESPN, where they're going to get their statistics for the playoff percentage, and they're now falling back to 6.5 back in the wild card. So, I mean, they're done. The season's over for the Yankees. They're toast. I'm not going to sit here and rant about the Yankees-Braves series because I don't think there's much to rant about. I think we all saw that coming. But something else that came out that is worth ranting or, I guess, discussing and talking about is the alarming comments made by a former Yankee prospect about the way that the Yankees do things when it comes to player development within the farm system. So Ben Ruda came out the other day, who has been in the Yankees organization from 2016 to 2021. He was on Foul Territory TV, is what it's called. It's a big channel. Eric Kratz does stuff on there. He was on Foul Territory podcast on Wednesday. It was an episode. You can also listen to the audio on there as well. He was with the Yankees organization from 2016 to 2021. Ben Ruda was on Foul Territory. Again, as I mentioned, Eric Kratz is on there, one of the guys that does the show. He was with the Yankees in 2017 as the backup catcher, spent some time with them at the major league level, also spent some time with the Yankees in 2020 during the COVID year, caught Davy Garcia as his first start. He also talked a little bit about when Davy Garcia just got DFA'd about a week ago. He talked about how, he saw a lot of potential in him. The Yankees clearly ruined him. Eric Kratz, it's a great show. He's been very outspoken, a former player of the Yankees. He's been very outspoken with the way the Yankees do things within their organization and how dysfunctional it is. But Ben Ruda, who he had on, was in the organization from 2016 to 2021, was in the farm system, didn't get any call up at MLB at all, was in the farm system the entire time, and discussed the glaring issues with the Yankees player development. Now, before I take a deep dive into this, we've known this for a while now with the Yankees organization. And we've mentioned this over the last couple weeks. We've talked about this a lot recently because of the recent struggles, that the New York Yankees need to quit all this, we did this with we're over the luxury tax. We spent this amount of money. We did this. We did that. And instead of bragging about all the money they're spending and spending it in wrong places, the Yankees specifically need to take a step back. Instead of acquiring old, washed-up talent, they need to take a step back and reboot, reset, and look at the farm system and invest more in player development. Instead of going out and adding all these other pieces and trying to win now with a scotch taped together roster, the Yankees need to stop trying that and need to reset, restart, rebuild, retool, however you want to put it, and invest more in the farm system. That's what the Yankees need to do, because they haven't done that in a very long time. They don't invest in player development. They don't, I guess you could say, they don't invest in player development. They don't help player development. The player development for the Yankees is atrocious. They ruin prospects. They don't develop prospects. It is a train wreck when it comes to the Yankees farm system. And these comments were, I feel like, expected at some point, but they're glaring because it's a guy that was within the farm system and witnessed it firsthand. He saw it with his own eyes. He was put through what the Yankees thought was good developing training, what the Yankees thought was development. That's what he was put through. And it wasn't anything productive what the Yankees had these guys do, specifically during the 2020 COVID spring training. It is embarrassing when you read some of these comments. And we've known this for a while, but especially getting it from somebody within the organization completely backs up the issues with this Yankee organization and how internally deep they are, or how internally deep the issues, I should say, are, that there is a massive fire burning within this organization and it needs change now. Not only is the MLB team a train wreck, all the farm system teams are a mess in terms of the way they handle player development and the way they don't prepare prospects for the MLB. And we've seen this countless times. And now you get this today from somebody that was in the organization and witnessed this firsthand. So just to give you some background here. So, again, he was on this podcast. He talked about the way they changed. So he said, quote, "They will change development culture back to old Yankees days." He did mention that. Keep in mind, I played in the Yankees organization before analytics 2016 to 2018, and then after 2018 to 2020, stark difference in developments. He mentioned how 2016, 2018, there wasn't a whole lot of analytical use. And then after that 2016, 2018, there was a lot more analytical use, and he noticed that. And when you look at team performance, well, it's dropped because 2017 was the last time they were closest to a World Series. We're sitting here in 2023 watching one of the worst Yankee teams we've seen in over 20 years. That's how bad this team is. It's worse than 2016 because at least in 2016 they recognized, hey, we're not going anywhere. Let's call up the young guys. The Yankees won't do that this year because they think they're smarter. They think they can still win a championship. They think they're still really good when everybody in America knows how bad this team is. And you don't have to be a baseball genius to know that this Yankee team is a complete dumpster fire and it's spreading. So here were the exact comments made by Ben Ruda. So Braun, who was on the podcast, one of the other guys, Scott Braun was the podcast host. He mentioned this. So he asked Ruda for an example of he printed spring training or pointed into spring training in 2020 prior to the COVID shutdowns. So he asked him what they were doing in spring training 2020 prior to the COVID shutdowns, the whole development, how it changed from 2016 to 2018, and the analytical approach they took. So he said, here's all you need to know, Ruda said. In 2020, before COVID hit, spring training, we played a game called pitchers versus hitters. The only way to score a point was to walk or hit a ball 95 miles an hour plus. There's no baseball being taught there anymore. No base running, moving runners, fundamentals, etc. And that, to me, was one of the main quotes that he talked about. He also said, I do believe there's a place in the game for analytics. It needs to be, this is what he said ended up saying on Twitter. He said it needs to be a healthy mix. It's not a knock on the coaches they have. They were doing exactly what they were hired to do. The strategy of running an organization like this is just dumb. It's the truth. The coaches, and I'm sure Aaron Boone has this with him as well, where they're handing him all the analytics, and he's got to make decisions off of that. He's not making his own decisions. He's making decisions based on analytics. And that's from up top. That's Brian Cashman, who feels like analytics are the greatest thing in the world, even though it's clearly not working and hasn't been working for a very long time. But listen to this. Again, I'm going to read this over again because this is the main part of it. This is the meat and potatoes of what he said. It was a game called pitchers versus hitters. The only way to score a point was to walk or hit a ball 95 miles per hour plus. There's no baseball being taught there anymore. No base running, moving runners, fundamentals, etc. And I find that funny, and it's so accurate because everything the Yankees struggled with or are struggling with, he just mentioned. They can't move runners over. They stink with runners in scoring position. They have terrible fundamentals in terms of just some of the defense mistakes. There's so many boneheaded mistakes on the bases. And yeah, no base running. The Yankees are bottom 5 in the league in base running. The amount of mental mistakes they make on the base pass is just pathetic. And one of the guys that makes so many of those mental mistakes is Gleyber Torres, who was a prospect that the Yankees have failed to truly develop into his legitimate star potential. They've turned him into a shell of himself. Gleyber Torres will never be what we expect him to be because his organization put him through the analytical approach, completely changed his game, and he's never going to be the same player we thought he would be. And you see it at the Major League Club. This team can't run the bases. This team can't move runners. This team has no fundamentals. There's nothing that is good about this New York Yankees team. And what they're doing in the farm system is only setting these guys up for failure. Again, we talk about this team not having any situational hitting. They can't hit with runners in scoring position. They're terrible at it. And you see here, the only way to score a point is to walk or hit a 95 mile an hour plus off the bat. Hit a ball 95 miles an hour plus. Because again, the whole Yankees approach is launch angle, exit velo. You're going to strike out. We don't care. We don't care about base running. We don't care about the fundamentals. We don't care about anything else. All we care about is launch angle, exit velo, because that's the analytical approach. That's all they care about. And it makes sense here. It doesn't say anywhere that they worked on trying to work a quality AB. How to approach, finding a perfect pitch in the zone 3-1. How to come back from down 0-2. Trying to attack first pitch strike. None of that's discussed. Instead, what the Yankees are teaching all these young guys is stand up there. You either take a walk, which the Yankees don't walk today, they just don't, or hit a ball 95 miles an hour plus. So basically, swing as hard as you can, completely drop your shoulder, launch angle, 95 miles an hour, and we consider that good. That's all they were doing. That's all they were being taught. There's nothing that is valuable to learn there. There wasn't any, hit behind the runner on first, maybe a guy in right field's got a weak arm, or however they're playing defense, I don't know, try and, put the ball into right field, hit opposite field. Instead of always just trying to launch angle, fly ball, level out your swing, hit the ball to right field. Runner on third. Get it out of the infield, right? Just anything to get out of the infield, put a good swing on it, just score the runner. There's no fundamental approach to this Yankee team. There's no hitting with runners in scoring position. There's no situational hitting. There's none of it when it comes to this Yankee team. It's sad, but there isn't. And it starts in the farm system. And look, I understand not every prospect is going to pan out. Not every prospect's going to pan out. It's just not. You might have a high on prospect that doesn't work out. So when you look at the baby bombers, because this has been a discussion now over the last 24 hours since this interview was conducted and since he made these comments, the baby bombers were supposed to be the next Yankees dynasty. That's what it was supposed to be. You had Gary Sanchez, Gleyber Torres, Clint Frazier, Greg Bird, Miguel Andujar, Aaron Judge, Tyler Austin as well to a lesser extent. Those were your baby bombers. Those guys were supposed to be the future of this franchise for the next 5 to 10 years. Those guys were supposed to be the core of this franchise. Some people hyped them up and talked them up as the next, almost like the next core four of Pettit, Mo, Jeter, and Posada. That's what everybody hyped them up to be. And when you look at the 7 players that I just mentioned, primarily 6, 5 of them didn't pan out. Gary Sanchez didn't work. Greg Bird didn't work. Miguel Andujar didn't work. Clint Frazier didn't work. Now, Gleyber will never be what we thought he'd be because the Yankees have thrown him into their analytical approach, completely changed the way his game is meant to be played. Gleyber is a high-average power guy that's okay defensively. What the Yankees have turned him into is average. He's a 260, 265 hitter at best, maybe cracks 270. Sure, he can hit for power. He's a very streaky hitter now. He makes very dumb mental mistakes on the base paths. That's what the Yankees turn him into. That's what they turn him into. And he grounds into a ton of double plays. That's what they've turned him into. And his strikeouts go way up. Gleyber Torres was never supposed to be a high strikeout guy. He had some pop. He was supposed to be this good, young, contact guy, hit with runners in scoring position, just good, consistent hitter. And what they've turned him into is power or bust primarily, and a guy that strikes out a good amount, very streaky, and a guy that makes a lot of mental mistakes and grounds into a ton of double plays. So he will never be what the Yankees expected him to be. Aaron Judge out of this list is the only one that has truly panned out. He's the only one. Yankee captain, and even then they don't have to pitch to him because all 8 other guys stink in this lineup. But my point here is, when you look at the way this organization is ran and you look at the comments made yesterday, it's sad. But there's a good chance the reason 6 of the 7 guys I mentioned never really panned out because of the development, because of the lack of player development. Anthony Volpe this season, I know I've mentioned this example many times, but he is a perfect newest example of a coaching staff that is incompetent, so incompetent, they can't even help a young player who's struggling. Again, you know the story. Anthony Volpe needed to have dinner with Austin Wells, a double-A catcher, now triple-A, his former teammate with Somerset, double-A, Somerset Patriots. He needed to have a discussion with him, eating chicken parm dinner in his house in Watchung Hills, for Austin Wells to pull out a tablet and say, hey, let's take a look at your swing and see where you're doing wrong. Let's compare your swing from last year in Double-A where you were hitting well to this year and see what's wrong. He made an adjustment, and yeah, he still haven't, his rookie year hasn't been phenomenal, but since that adjustment, he's certainly been much more consistent. Much more. You couldn't tell me there's not a single coach in that locker room that could have helped him, that could have sat with Volpe and said, hey, let's take a tablet. Let's compare your swing from last year. Let's compare your swing to this year. Let's see what you're doing wrong. There isn't. Because they don't develop players. They don't know how. They're so focused on this analytical approach. Strikeout, home runs, exit via launch angle. We don't care about anything else. And it's sad. It's disappointing. But the amount of talent that this organization has wasted is beyond pathetic. And it needs to change. And it needs to change immediately after the Yankees' final game of the regular season, whenever that is. Or I shouldn't say whenever, because I know it's the end of September, but whoever they play. I know their last home series will be Arizona. I think they'll be in Kansas City for 2 games. They'll end their season on September, or no, it doesn't. No, it's got to be September 3rd. I don't know. October, I think. Is it October 1st? I think they end their whatever it is. Their final game will be in Kansas City against the Royals. Once that game is over and they fly back to New York, Aaron Boone's got to be fired. Brian Cashman's got to be fired. Hal Steinbrenner has to blow this up. From the major league level to the guys in player development. They have to erase this analytical approach, get back to the basic, get back to the fundamentals, get back to the, base running, fielding, hitting with runners in scoring position, learning the basics that you learn in Little League. I mean, it's the truth. You learn these things in Little League. How to hit behind runners, how to go opposite field, how to pull the ball. All these different things. Base running. You learn that in Little League. And the Yankees don't teach that. They don't know how. They can't. And it's pathetic. It's sad. But it's the state of sad affairs in the Yankees. And I couldn't be happier to see this get released yesterday. I couldn't. Because for 3-4 years now, we've talked about how dysfunctional this organization is. And to finally have a guy that witnessed it firsthand, went through the drills that the Yankees went through, the Yankees put their prospects through, just shows you how pathetic this organization is and how much talent they've wasted. When you look back at the old days, Gene Stick Michael was an excellent prospect talent evaluator. Who do we have now? Brian Cashman, he can't evaluate talent. Aaron Boone, heck no. Hal Steinbrenner, yeah, forget about that. We have nobody. And you're also hearing how Dylan Lawson kind of ran the whole thing when they brought him in. The Yankees this year, their whole approach was look early or swing early, look late, which makes zero sense because that was the whole Dylan Lawson approach at the beginning of this year was swing early, look late. And it made no sense because late in counts, you've got to be swinging. 1-2 count, you've got to be ready to swing. You've got to protect. You don't want to look at a called third strike. 0-2 count, you've got to protect. 2-2 count, protect. 3-2 count, you've got to be ready for anything. You don't want to just be up there, say, I'm going to look at a 3-2 pitch. Just hope it's a ball. Half the time, I think that's what the Yankees hitters are doing. And again, there's no adjustments either. I mean, you watch Stanton. Yeah, last night, he struck out again. They keep throwing him low and outside pitches, and he keeps swinging at them. They're in the dirt. There's no adjustments there. There are no guys on this roster can make adjustments. They can't. Because they don't know how. Because they go up there with their same approach. Just going to try to hit a home run here. Just go for exit velo. It's what they do. Because that's the analytical approach. That's what they've put in these hitters' heads. And that's why they stink. And that's why this organization is an unmitigated disaster. And that's why Hal Steinbrenner needs to wake up, realize that this thing's a train wreck, fire everybody, blow this whole thing up from the top down. And I mean that. I mean from the major league level all the way through the farm system. Blow it up. Bring in a guy that can oversee everything, evaluate talent, reset the farm system, reset the player development approach, reset the whole analytical approach, and blow this thing up and retool and rebuild and evaluate and build talent and build the roster the right way. This Yankee team is far away from number 28. They are far away. I'm sorry to anybody that thought next year they'll be right back in the conversation. No. This team is at least probably another good 3-4 years away from even being in the conversation because they have a lot of work to do. And as each loss goes by, the deeper the hole the Yankees get, or the Yankees dig for themselves, I should say. It does. They're under 500 now. I mean, and Hal Steinbrenner is still confused about, this Yankee organization. He's still confused about why fans are upset. Now, I will tell you something. I will say something. If you want to look at this from a positive perspective, and maybe 3 to 4 years is a while, maybe that doesn't happen. I've talked about a 1-year retool, but I think it's going to take, in my opinion, and I always, you know how I am on this show. I always try to be a glass half full type guy. I always try my best to be that. I know I might be looking at this from a glass half empty perspective, but it's hard not to when this team stinks and there's so much work to do, and there's so many contracts that have to be unloaded that the Yankees probably won't be willing or teams wouldn't want to pick up. It's just they're in a really tough spot, which is why I think it's going to take a couple years, not just 1 year, because they've dug themselves in such a deeper hole than they were in beginning of this year. Because they've gotten them tied, they've tied themselves into some even worse contracts since the start of last season or since the start of this year with the whole Rodon stuff now. And you still got the Stanton contract where no team's going to want to take that on. He's got a no-trade clause, so it's going to be extremely tough to trade him. Even if he agrees on a trade, what are you even going to get for him? And who's going to be a team that's going to be willing to take that contract? And how much are the Yankees willing to even be able to eat? Like, Stan's probably not going to go anywhere. But if you want to look at this from a positive perspective, you do have 2 very good talent evaluators in your organization right now, and that's Brian Sabean and Omar Minaya. 2 guys that can evaluate talent and 2 guys that have done it before. Sabean constructed those Giants teams when they won 3 World Series championships. He did. And he constructed it with a mix of some veteran talent. He also constructed it with a whole lot of homegrown talent. So when you look at that, you could potentially see, okay, maybe you do have the answers in-house. And you wouldn't have to go outside of the organization. But you still would have to blow things up, promote Sabean or Minaya, have maybe one of them oversee the player development, have another one oversee the actual talent that they're bringing in, and reset. And if the answer is within the organization, then you won't have to worry about going through the whole process of bringing somebody else in, letting them, have hopefully trusting them. Like if you already have somebody that's within the organization in terms of like a Brian Sabean or an Omar Minaya, you can promote them, be an easier process, and get to work. That's a positive way to look at it. But, I mean, even then, they're going to have a lot of work to do because you've got some really bad contracts. Stanton's contract's terrible. I've already given up on Rodon. His contract stinks. I don't think Rodon's going to do a single thing for us. We've seen this how many times? How many times have we seen this in the Brian Cashman era where he's went out and spent big money or he's went out and brought in a pitcher that everybody thought would be good and never panned out? How many times have we seen this? This is just another example of it. Until Rodon proves otherwise, I don't think he's going to do a single thing here. But that's just me. Maybe I'm too negative. Either way, this team's in a really tough spot. A really tough spot. So, those comments were alarming. They were very alarming for a guy that spent... It wasn't like he was just in the organization for 1 year. He spent 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. He spent 6 years in the organization. He saw a lot in those 6 seasons, and he saw the difference from 2016, 2018, kind of the pre-analytical era, and 2018 to now, where it's analytical era. Since they've hired Boone, since they got rid of Girardi, since they, brought in Lawson, that's been a train wreck. And you even look at the days of Kevin Long. You go way back. Now that's not way back, but hitting coach, he was a guy that talked to the hitters. He was making adjustments with the hitters. He was a guy that really was just a very good communicator. Not somebody that just sat there, looked at a book of numbers, and based off his teaching points with that. And that's something else, too, that, look, I'm not saying that Aaron Boone's got to talk to every hitter, but you never see Aaron Boone ever going over to a hitter and helping him. Like, you never see that. You never see Aaron Boone in the, in the dugout or even before the game going over to a hitter and trying to teach him an adjustment, making an adjustment, trying to help him out. Like, you never see him talking to him. You don't. You never see any of the coaches talking to the players because there is no one-on-one, there is no communication, there is no one-on-one actual adjustments being made. It's just analytics, follow this and go ahead and do what we want you to do. And that's why the coaches there are just statues. That's all they're doing. It's the men up top. It's the Brian Cashmans and the Hal Steinbrenner that messed this whole thing up, and those are the guys that really need to go. Hal Steinbrenner, realistically, if you really want this thing to turn around, he needs to sell the team. He'll never do that, but, if you really want this thing to get turned around, Hal needs to sell the team. That's never going to happen. He will never do that. The Steinbrenners will always owe the Yankees until the end of time, but that's really what needs to happen. As much as you ask for, it's never going to happen. He'll be here forever. Cashman getting fired? Well, maybe that happens. Maybe. But anyway, that's what I got for the Yankees. Comment down below your thoughts on the Yankees player development issues. And do you see moves being made in the offseason to change the trajectory of this franchise that desperately needs change right now? All right, so we move on here to a little bit of football. I was at Jets-Bucks joint practice yesterday and had a great time. Second time out at practice this year. Went to July 27th practice, I think I was at, so been almost about a month now, and then was out there yesterday. Jets-Bucks joint practice, had a great time. Always enjoy going to the Florham Park. Awesome facility, always a great time watching practice, great environment, seeing all the fans there, seeing the excitement. The energy level yesterday was definitely great. I know today was kind of a slower practice 2 days before the game where no pads, shorter practice, not as many reps, not as many drills. But Breece Hall was back out there. You did see Becton getting some work at right tackle with the twos. I'll get more into that on my In the Trench with Gangrene podcast that I'll do later on. So I'll get into my thoughts on today's practice there. But, the media narrative, the media continues to bash and crush the New York Jets. And look, I'll start with this. There's no doubt that the New York Jets, the offensive line is a concern. There's no doubt about it. It is certainly a concern. I can't deny that. Watching practice yesterday, it was ugly. There wasn't no doubt about that. But there's this notion going around. Now, number one, before I get to that, my final thing on the offensive line is there is help on the way. Like, you're getting Dwayne Brown back. Becton's starting to get some reps at right tackle. I would like to see him get up with the first team, even at left tackle, because he's looked really good. You do have guys like AVT coming back. Lake and Tomlinson both missed practice over the last couple days. You have those two guys back. You still have guys like a Tittman and McGovern fighting for center situation spots. So you really do have a lot of questions up in the air, but you do have a lot of guys returning, and you expect to get the answers soon. It's not like this is the starting offensive line that's struggling. The starting offensive line really isn't out there. The main concern is, bringing these guys, getting these guys to build chemistry together, bringing Dwayne Brown back out there, giving Dwayne Brown a chance with the ones because he hasn't practiced all camp, and making sure that he is still can play at a high level, even after injury, even entering his age 38 season, right? Can he still play at a high level? Can he still produce? That's the biggest concern. But when you look at this New York Jets roster, the offensive line is the main concern. There's not many other concerns. And now you get the media continuing to go out and fake, put these false reports out about Aaron Rodgers. And the cover of the back of the New York Post today was it was ridiculous, to say the least. With the offensive line, it was a picture of the offensive line issues and a turnstile, and it was a picture of pass rushers from both the Dolphins, Bills, and all the and that was the. So it said same old Jets, OL Jets. It said same old L Jets, and it had a picture of, it looked like Jalen Phillips for Miami, Matthew Judon for New England, and Von Miller for Buffalo. It had three turnstiles, and they all had Jets on them. And it said turnstile line, a growing concern for Rodgers and Gangrene. And you're seeing this notion going around. Again, we'll get to the notion too with Robert Saleh. But, you see this notion going around that Rodgers is extremely frustrated with the offensive line when his comments yesterday clearly said the complete opposite. He mentioned how you got to be patient with the offensive line. You've got to, he still believes in them. There's still some guys missing. There is a point where you're going to want to go out there and have the 5 guys that are going to start week 1 in front of you, but it's still August. You still have time. You still have about 2 to 3 weeks to get this thing right. And the media is taking this and twisting it around. And they're acting as if the Jets are panicking. They're acting as if the Jets are in a really bad spot. When at the end of the day, and some of the things in Hard Knocks where Rodgers maybe seems frustrated at times, it's just holding guys accountable. That's all it is. That's a good thing. That's okay. And now you get the unnecessary media narrative, media bashing of Robert Saleh, which is completely unnecessary and blown out of proportion. It's a lose-lose situation for Robert Saleh when it comes to the way the media is treating him. In Hard Knocks episode 1, they said he wasn't enough of a leader. He said how Rodgers seemed like he was coaching the team more than Rodgers. Like he had more control than Robert Saleh. And in episode 2 of Hard Knocks, you saw him go in on the offensive line, make that speech, hold guys accountable, and now you have people saying that Saleh is just doing that to put on a show, and he really doesn't hold the guys accountable. And it's more of a reason to be concerned about the offensive line. So what do you want the guy to do? It's a lose-lose situation. Because no matter what Robert Saleh does, no matter what the Jets say or do, there's going to be people that have problems. Episode 1 of Hard Knocks, Robert Saleh. People said, he doesn't have enough control of the locker room. Episode 2 legitimately shows accountability, goes out there, hammers into the offensive line, holds them accountable, says they've got to be better, which is true, and people still have a problem with it. So what do you want the guy to do? People are saying, he's doing it for show. What? No, that proved that he holds the guys accountable. It erased many of the questions that were being asked maybe with the Jets. That's what they were asking. Or that's what they're saying. It erased those questions. That's what that mentioned. And it's just disappointing because, again, this happened at the beginning of the offseason during OTAs where, there was that one day Rodgers pulled his calf or whatever. He pulled himself out of practice, didn't practice, and everyone was like, Rodgers is hurt. This is going to be a common theme this year where he's going to be injured a lot. It was like he pulled a calf in an OTA practice in May. It's May. And the media took it and ran with it. And the media continues to just take the media on the outside of the Jets continues to take this whole Rodgers experiment and experience so far, which has been nothing short of great. It's been awesome. He's brought energy to the team. He's brought a good, he's fit right in as one of the guys. He's brought some accountability. He's brought a legitimate, stable quarterback play. He's brought a lot of talent. I mean, the guy in practice is making plays a lot. There's a lot of positives when it comes to Aaron Rodgers. A lot of them. And the media continues to throw around this notion that it hasn't been an enjoyable experience. And there's issues with this organization. And the Jets have problems. And Robert Saleh is not holding guys accountable. When none of that is true. And some of this is people that you thought were Jets fans in the media saying these things. On the radio or on TV, complaining about Robert Saleh giving us this fake tough guy vibe in episode 2 of Hard Knocks. So what do you want the guy to do? And people saying that, some of them Jets fans, can you even consider them Jets fans that are saying that? It's like, what? What? So, look, at the end of the day, you still have to go out there and you still have to prove it. At the end of the day, that's all that matters, right? You're going to have to go out there. You're going to have to prove it. Having a good roster on paper is one thing. You do have to go out there and prove it. But these people are just, and that's why I can't wait for the season to start to stop all these hate, stop all this hate. Even you got these people saying, Saleh yesterday was watching the defense. He wasn't watching much of the offense. And you have people, not Jets fans, but you have these other people, some Giants fans. And, They have problems with Saleh watching the defense, saying, oh, that's not a good coach. He's got to be watching both sides of the ball. He's a defensive-minded coach. He's watching the defense. He'll get the report from the offense from Nate Hackett and everybody else later. He watches both sides of the ball during the game. He'll go watch film of both sides of the ball. Now, all of a sudden, we have an issue with Robert Saleh watching the defense during joint practice. Now that's a problem. Really. We're nitpicking so much that now Robert Saleh can't watch the defense during practice. So that's a problem now, according to many. Seriously? Seriously. Just completely false media narrative surrounding this team. Like, to even go out there, the New York Post, to even go out there and say, oh, same old Jets. Same old Jets. We're really bringing back the same old Jets stuff. It is so far, we're so far removed from the whole same old Jets takes. The old same old Jets nonsense. We're so far removed from that. And yet you've got these people bringing it back because there's a little bit of a concern on the offensive. Because the offensive line isn't fully set yet. And you've got people saying that Robert Saleh doesn't hold the guys accountable, and he only did it for show on Hard Knocks. And we've got people saying it's the same old Jets because the coach, who was a defensive-minded coach, is watching the defense. How is that a problem? How's that a problem? Come on now. Really? That's what we're nitpicking now. That is what we're criticizing now. Maybe I'm a Jets biased, but I think that's ridiculous, in my opinion. In my opinion, I think it's ridiculous. But, you got to face it. Again, if you ain't got no haters, you ain't popping it. It's so true, but it's certainly something that is it talked about a lot, and it's certainly something that is unfortunate. But this is what you get when you go out and get Aaron Rodgers. You get the hate, and now it's time to go out there and prove everybody wrong. And I'm looking forward to that happening because I know that's going to happen for sure because this team's too talented. This team's got a ton of talent, and they're going to be able to go out there and win some games. And then you won't get people talking about it. So, anyway, that's my take on Robert Saleh. We get you ready for Mets-Cardinals tonight. Jose Quintana versus Adam Wainwright. Quintana's 0-4 with a 3.03 ERA. Wainwright's 3-7 with an 8.78 ERA. He has had a really, really rough year for the Cardinals. Tough season for sure for Adam Wainwright, a guy who's still looking for his 200th win. He's 198-24. He's only had 3 wins this season. Got to find a way to win 2 more the rest of the way. So we'll see if he can do that tonight against the Mets. That is first of 4. Yankees will open up a series tomorrow against the Red Sox. 6-game homestand, Red Sox Nationals, after a 2-7 9-game road trip. So that'll do it for the episode of the Bubbs on Sports podcast. I'll be back here tomorrow, either with a video or a live stream. Still trying to figure that out. Either way, there will be content up tomorrow, whether it's a video or a live stream. There will be content out on the channel tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. As always, hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.